Hi, this is Paul Thurrott again with my wife Stephanie, and today we're going to tackle a more finite topic, a smaller topic, I guess, although one that will impact anybody who tries to get Mexican residency. Although in our case, we landed on it during the home purchase, the apartment
Hmm.
purchase.
A small but important topic.
Yeah, and it's interesting because this is a little bit of U.S. based legalese, I guess, that I don't think most Americans have heard of. We certainly had never heard of this.
No, I never heard this word before.
Yeah.
Mexicans seem very familiar with it. I
Yes,
was a
exactly.
new one to me. You know?
So back in May, when we went to Mexico to finalize the purchase of the apartment, we showed up at the notary's office with a bunch of representatives from the notary. You and I were there. Obviously, the sellers were there. Our representative Jose was there. There's a lot of paper signing and kind of standard mortgage. Well, it wasn't a mortgage, a house sale
Mhm.
um, type stuff.
It seemed in many ways similar to how the process works in the US.
Yes. And we had described earlier how you had transferred money and put everything in place so that we could actually make this purchase. And so the time came for us to, or for you, I guess, to do that. And the woman who was the representative of the notary asked if we were splitting this purchase 50-50. In other words, you and I would both own half of the property, which, of course, yes. And then she said, okay, I just need both of you to make a payment for 50% of the remaining price that was left. And of course, we could not do that. You had transferred all of this into a single account in your name. And we explained that to her. And she said, well, under Mexican law, for you to buy property as a couple, the payment has to come from both of you. It can't come from just one of you. And we explained in turn that we were here together, that you were not committing any kind of a fraud.
Right.
You had
Of our own free will.
yeah, you had made these transfers for us together. We were here together to make the purchase. That didn't make any sense, but it shut down the that meeting for about
Mhm.
30
That
minutes or
was like
more.
a record screech hard stop to that meeting.
Yeah, and we had a lot of issues heading into this where I kept thinking, something is going to screw this up, and for something like this to happen at the last second like that was a little scary.
Mhm.
So what did she come back with originally? She eventually came back and said that it was okay. And what was her initial resolution to this? Do you remember?
Well, we could go ahead and finish the signing and transfer the property. And then what we needed to do was legally prove that we were in fact married. So,
Right. 32 years, by the way, at this
yes.
point. Hmm.
Right. So, what we did originally while we were there is I had my parents go and get a copy of the marriage certificate. As it turns out, our marriage certificate is at the town hall in the town I grew up in. So, and my
Right.
parents still live there. So it was relatively convenient for them to go and pick it up and then send it to us via FedEx
Right. Next
for
day.
like $90.
Right. And it did not
Yeah,
arrive the next day. It arrived two
no,
days
it
later.
arrived 2 days
But the
later.
idea was that we needed to have it so we could go to the U.S. Embassy, right, in
Mm-hmm.
Mexico City.
Mm-hmm. Embassy or consulate
Yeah.
to then get what is called an apostille. The
Right.
apostille is the part of this that we had not heard about before. Um, it's basically a legal way to say that a document is valid. So
This
when
is
the when
U.S. based, which is what is interesting to me. In other words, our marriage certificate is a U.S. based legal document. In fact, it's pretty impressive looking. If I had ever seen it before, I don't remember it, but it was, it arrived via FedEx. I was like, well, this is so official looking. Surely, it had an embossed seal on it, and
Mhm.
it was really impressive. And I thought, well, why would they not just accept this? This is not something you make at the local, print shop or whatever.
Mhm. But I guess you could, and I mean,
Yeah.
every state and possibly every city and town has their own way of doing marriage
Hmm.
certificates in the US, and they are all in English. So it's not clear to somebody
Right.
who speaks Spanish what this document even says or means. So the apostille is a way to say, yes, this is a valid, legitimate marriage certificate that you can trust to prove that these two people are married.
Now,
You can obviously use apostille for other types of documents too.
right,
In our
right.
case, we needed it for a marriage certificate.
It is unclear to me why the official document, which again is impressive looking, was not okay, but the apostilled version was, because that too I feel could be faked,
Sure.
with a little bit of effort. But I mean, how
Mhm.
would they know? Because, like you said, every state has their own way of doing things in the apostilles. I don't know. We've only done it through Massachusetts, but all right. So you contacted the embassy.
I contacted the embassy, and this is obviously a common question with the embassy
Hmm.
because when you call the embassy in Mexico City and you listen to the various phone prompts, one of the things they say before you even talk to a real person is, "We don't do apostilles here. You need to do that back in the United States in whatever state issued the document."
Right.
So we kind of struck out. So we have this
Well,
marriage certificate, and
right. We had a marriage certificate obtained by your parents,
Mhm.
sent at great cost to Mexico, and then we just ended up flying home with it. Now, in the interim, we had gotten the keys to the apartment. We moved in. Well,
Mhm.
we didn't move there, but we started putting stuff in there and so forth. And then we flew home with this document. So,
Yes.
and then so how did you get it
So I looked
apostilled,
up
so to speak?
online because I didn't know how this process worked,
Hmm.
and you can't do it in, you have to do it in the state where the document was issued. So even though we had this document in hand, living in Pennsylvania, we can't go to any place, any official place in Pennsylvania and have the apostille put in
Right.
place. We have to
Right.
take it to, well, it has to go to Massachusetts. So what I did is looked up online. There are 3 places in Massachusetts that do this. Mailed it to one. You mail it with a, self-addressed stamped envelope, like,
Sure.
you know, and with $6. It's actually very inexpensive. There are services online that will
Hmm.
offer to do this for you,
Right.
and the ones I've come across charge like 70 or $75. And I can't imagine they speed up the process that much.
Yeah. Do
So
you
it was
remember
it was quick.
how
It
long it
was
took?
quick. It was, I mean, I think I had it back in like a week and a half. I mean, I think it got to Fall River, Massachusetts in the mail, and I think they just probably processed it that day and mailed
Right.
it back to me because it was, I think online it says, 4 to 6 weeks or something like that, but it was
The
quick.
the apostilled or processed document had a kind of a cover sheet on it with an embossed badge of some kind with ribbons going through. It's crazy looking.
Yeah, ribbons that
Um,
attach it physically to the marriage certificate.
yeah. Now, of course, now we have this thing that we need legally for our transaction to go through with the government and all that kind of stuff. And after you buy property in Mexico, it takes months. It could take 3 months. It could take 6 months. It takes a long time. So it's not like this held up the process. But for us to get the, I guess, the deed or whatever for the apartment. So that's still something that hasn't happened. That will happen down the road. So eventually, because you and Kelly went back to Mexico in June, with Kelly being our daughter, instead of sending it there in the mail again, you flew back with it. So you flew back and you gave it to Jose, who was our
Mhm.
representative,
Yes. Yeah.
and he would have delivered it to
The notary.
the notary, and then they can
Hmm.
process it with the paperwork that will eventually uh, give us the deed.
Hmm.
So in the in the span of 2 months, this document was created, FedEx to Mexico City, flown home on a plane to Pennsylvania, mailed to Massachusetts, apostilled, mailed back to Pennsylvania, and then it got on a plane and was flown to back to Mexico City.
Yep.
Um, it's kind of incredible, but this is something that we needed because of our particular situation.
Hmm.
Now, knowing this, if people are going to buy property in Mexico, obviously what they should do is create 2 accounts.
Right. Or a
Um,
joint account.
or a joint account. I'm sorry, or a joint account. Right, exactly.
Hmm.
That's actually much simpler.
Hmm.
And this will also come up during the residency process. It's something we still haven't done, but at some point when we try to get temporary or permanent residency, we will need an apostille copy of this same document, if I'm not mistaken, and
Hmm.
possibly other documents. I don't know. We haven't gone through the process
No, we
yet.
haven't gone through the process, but now we know that it's easy once you know how to do it. It's easy,
So
relatively
what isn't?
inexpensive, and relatively
Right, right.
fast.
That's right.
But we had no idea, going through the process of calling the embassy, having the document FedExed, figuring out who needed it, where it needed to be, all that stuff was
Right,
complicated and time consuming.
right. Well, anyway, there you go. Apostilled. That's the word of the day.
Sure is. We're building our vocabulary.
That's right.